So I want to start out with a story. There was a little boy that really wanted a bicycle, and he'd been watching some Christian programs and decided that what he needed to do is to pray about this bicycle. So he went into his room that night, and he said, prayed out, "Dear magnificent Father, benevolent creator of all mankind, I beseech thee to bestow upon me a bicycle, and Lord, make it be in the color of the sky blue." And so he got up the next morning, he went out and looked outside, and there was no bicycle. So he's kind of disappointed. So he went back in, he watched another TV show, and that night, before he went to bed, he said, "Daddy, I want you to know I'm your child, and I know that you want your child to have all good things, and you want me to prosper and to thrive and to live a long, good life, and to do that, I need a bicycle, so I declare to you my need for a bicycle, and I proclaim that this bicycle will be blue." And so the next morning he got up and he looked out the window, and there was still no bicycle. So his mother was watching him and noticed that he went into the living room and picked up the little statue of Mary that she had there and carried it outside and disappeared for a while, and pretty soon he came back in without it. And she thought that was kind of unusual, so she followed him down. He went into his bedroom and shut the door, and she was listening at the door, and she heard him say, "Dear Jesus, if you ever want to see your mother again..." Well, the Bible tells us that God will meet all of our needs according to his riches and glory. But it's important to understand and to remember and to acknowledge the fact that we do that in partnership with him, and that there are certain things that we need to accept, that we need to enter into. We can't simply blindly imagine God's going to solve all our problems, heal all of our things, without engaging in some of the principles that he lays out for us. So as we come to the 18th chapter of Corinth, and Paul has come into this city, I imagine that he is there in a sense of just spiritual exhaustion. And I guess we can't sincerely know, but there are several things in here that happen that just make me think, Paul, he's kind of at the end of his rope. I mean, he has established some churches, and there have been some moments of incredible faith and changed lives, but also just this constant refusal, this constant confrontation had to be just exhausting. And so he comes to Corinth, and in fact, there's a verse here that I think sort of epitomizes it for me. He's speaking to the Corinthians, and he says this, that Paul devoted himself exclusively to preaching, testifying to the Jews that Jesus was the Messiah. But when they opposed Paul and became abusive, he shook out his clothes in protest and said to them, "Your blood be on your own heads. I am innocent of it all. From now on, I go to the Gentiles." I don't think that's the Spirit of God speaking. I think that's Paul's frustration speaking. And the reason I believe that is because if you follow Paul on for this, he doesn't he doesn't give up on the Jews. Everywhere he goes, the first thing he does is go to the synagogue. His heart is still beating for the Jewish people, and he will never give up on them. Till the day he dies, he literally will give his life that the Jews might come to him. So I see this as a moment of frustration. I'm just saying, I'm just tired. I'm just exhausted with this. So there are several things that happen while he's in Corinth that I think God uses to revive Paul, and I think they are good for us because you may be in a time right now that you're just exhausted, you're just tired, you're just weary, or there may be a time in your life when that happens. Maybe some tragedy will happen, maybe some calamity will happen, maybe something will happen in your life that changes in such a way that you just need to know, how is it that God is going to refresh me in this time? And there are some deliberate things that we can do, that we can be proactive about to make that happen. Well, the first thing that happens in Corinth, Paul is sitting there, and it says, there he met a Jew named Aquila, a native of Portus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had ordered all Jews to leave Rome. Now we know exactly when this happened. We know the year that it happened, and the Jews didn't permanently leave Rome, but temporarily a lot of them, probably not even all of them, left Rome. And so this is part of the reason. And so it says also that they were tent makers. And so I just can imagine that Paul has set up his little booth down there in the market to sell tents, or he's wandering through the market and he sees this booth of other tent makers, and he goes immediately, "Oh wow, I'm going to go see what kind of tents they make." and starts engaging them and discovers not only are they tent makers, but they're Jews. Well, Paul's a Jew. And he goes, well, that's great. Why are you here? Well, because we were persecuted and, we had to leave Rome. And then somehow in the conversation it comes out that they're also Christ followers. That, from those people that were saved on the day of Pentecost, who had come from Rome, had gone back and established a church, and they were Christ followers. And so immediately, there's this connection between Paul and them. And at that moment begins a lifelong friendship of co-workers. I was reading an article this week that said, having a face-to-face interaction with a close friend one day a week is as powerful to your health as stopping smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. Isn't that incredible? I mean, we constantly hear about the ill effects of smoking. I mean, you can hardly watch a movie without the preview being about something about, don't smoke. And we've been hearing that for years and years and years about how deadly smoking is, that it will severely shorten your life. And now they're saying one day a week, having an interaction, a close face-to-face, not Facebook or not on the telephone, but face-to-face interaction with a friend is as beneficial. It will increase your lifespan as much as stopping smoking. That's just astounding to me. And it reminds me that one of the reasons that we get together every week on Sunday is because it's good for our health. It isn't, obviously we do it because we're worshiping God, and we want to devote this Sunday morning to Him and to praise and exhortation. But there's also something in every one of God's exhortations to us that is healthy for us. It's good for us physically. And so the longer that you can linger here, the more that you can interact with each other, and the more that you can engage each other, the better it is for your health. There is a tradition or something that's happening in the kingdom of churches right now, and that's the attendance has been dropping. They say regular attenders now is maybe twice a month, or maybe once a month. You're considered a regular attender. And that's detrimental to your health, to avoid going to church. And some of you are part of small groups where that's even better. And so I just want to encourage you to be regular, even when you don't feel like it, for your health, for the health of who you are and for your healing. You need to get together. In Hebrews it says, don't forsake the gathering of yourselves together. That isn't just that God benefits from it, you benefit from it. I realize that friendships come on a lot of different levels. Some of you may have a friend that's like Anne and, what was her friend's name? Diana, bosom buddies for life. And if you have a friendship like that, or if you've had a friendship like that, and friendships do come, some friendships change, sometimes they come and go, I just think you're an incredibly fortunate person, and you should cling to that. You should prosper that. You should cultivate that friendship. If you don't have one of those, I would ask, pray about it. Ask God to give you one, and learn to be a good friend. Because on that level of friendship, you have to be able to share something and know that it's not going to go beyond that person to absolutely no one else, not even their spouse. And if you're in a friendship and you have the sense that what you share to them is going to go anywhere else, the friendship's only going to go this deep. It'll never be deep. So cultivate your friendships, and appreciate your friendships, and create more of them. Because it's not only a good way to be human, but it's good for your health. So not only that, but it also says that Timothy arrives there and Silas arrives there, and so they are bringing good news as well. And yeah, they probably had some difficulties up there, but they also are bringing great news. And so at this point, we know that Paul writes his first letter. And I printed off a little thing that's out there on the foyer. If you want one, you can. It's a chronology of when Paul wrote all of his 13 books, and on his different missionary journeys. And some of it's a little questionable, but this is probably the most widely accepted schema. So if that'll be helpful to you, it's out there. But this is when he most certainly wrote 1 Thessalonians. And so here he's looking back at this church where he got driven out of town. And not only did he get driven out of town, but the Thessalonians chased him 3 days up by horse, cleared down to Berea, and chased him out of there as well. So he had to have some irritation. And yet here's this little church there, and he writes such loving, wonderful things back to them. So this would be a good week to read 1st and 2nd Thessalonians in your quiet time to think about that in Corinth if you're so inclined. But anyway, so friendships. The second thing that happens there is he says he stayed in Corinth a whole year. And, there are some times when we just need to take a break. We need to take a break from what we're doing. We need to take kind of a break from life. And it may not be possible for you to take a break from the thing that's most stressful to you. If the thing most stressful to you is your job or a relative or something. But you know what? You can find breaks from it. You can find moments away. And it stresses the importance of having a time where you're disconnected from those things which are causing you stress. And, we've been talking about the quiet moments. Put more and more of this into your day. Have more times where you hang out with your friends. Go places with your friends where you're not talking about the hecticness of life. Make sure that you do that with your friends. Go see a silly movie, or go watch a live comedy act, or do something which is totally disconnected from the stress in your life. And it says that Paul sat there and made tents. And maybe it's time to take up a hobby that you really enjoy, where it will disconnect you from that stress. Maybe you need to start regularly going for a walk. And so this is the part where you are doing something. I said sometimes we just want God to do everything. Sometimes we need to say, okay, I need to do this for myself, for my health. Now, the third thing it says is that God spoke to him and gave him a message. There have been a number of times when, I talk with God all the time. My relationship now is just a constant dialogue. We just are dialoguing all the time. I live in devotions. For me, that's just where I live. I don't get up in the morning and have 20 minutes with God. That's not me anymore. I wake up in the morning and I have 14 hours with God, and we're just dialoguing and talking all through life. But there have been a few times when God has specifically addressed me. There have been some specific answers that I've had, I can tell you about. But one of the things, and I've had some incredible dreams. I've had some incredible God dreams. And so during these times, it would be perfectly fine for you to say, God, as you're going to sleep, say, God, maybe this would be a night that you'd speak to me in a dream. Give me some encouragement in my dream tonight. At least give me comforting, humorous, make me laugh in my dream. Make my dreams be free of stress. Or pay particularly attention to the voice of God. And in my own experience, the only time I've heard God speak is when I've been completely by myself and there's been no one else around. And on a number of occasions, God has just said my name. There was one time I was standing in our house when I was working. There was no one else around. I was just standing there thinking, and all of a sudden I heard my name. I thought it was somebody in the other room. I turned around to see who was talking to me. And it was just Jonathan. Just sort of Jonathan. And it happened this week. I was sitting at home just by myself, and it's sort of fascinating that this time the voice was the voice of a woman. But it was this, I knew exactly the voice. It was God. And saying, Jonathan. I said, I needed that. I needed to know that God was still there. So God did that to Paul. And so it's okay for you to long for that, to want for that, and to make a place for that to happen. And it needs to be a quiet place. Jesus talks about going into your closet to pray. And Jesus talks about going off to the quiet, into the mountains, by himself, without disciples to pray. You need to have those moments in order for God to be able to speak and to say something into your life. So, in order for us to get through the difficult times, in order for us to get through those trying times in our life, we need to be somewhat proactive. We can trust that God's going to do stuff. We can trust that God's going to help us, but there's also our part to play in it as well. And, let me just say that in this quiet time, some people just linger there and never get out of it. They sort of disconnect, like they wait for retirement and then they disconnect and they never come back. And Paul comes back. He has a year, but his year isn't for perpetuance. It's to prepare him to come back. And that's why always the quiet times are. They're to prepare us to come back. They aren't to leave us there. And so this quiet time and the way that you prepare yourself can also be a way of re-envisioning yourself and re-seeing yourself. You know how when you're looking at something online, there's all these little commercials that come up on the side constantly. I saw this little blurb, I think it was on a news feed, and it said, find out if you're a liberal in 13 questions. I thought, what? I didn't click on it, but I thought, what? And I thought, isn't that typical of us to label ourselves? You know what? Some of you would say, I'm a liberal. Some of you would say you're a conservative. But the truth is, you're all both of those things. In some areas, all of you are liberal. In some areas, all of you are conservative. There isn't any such thing as a liberal or a conservative. And in fact, what's more important, if you want to put a label on yourself, put your label on that you're a Christ follower. Forget all the other labels. And stop labeling other people. And connect with other people and learn to love unusual ideas and wonder how in the world did they come up with that idea? Why are they like that? So be proactive in your friendships, in taking a break, and in cultivating your relationship to God and re-seeing yourself as a renewed, fresh, new person. Stand up and let me just pray for you. God, I thank you for this day. I thank you that it is called a day of rest because you want to refresh us and prepare us to re-engage. And so I pray for everyone here that they would be refreshed and be able to re-engage. In Jesus' name, amen.